Hello, everyone. Welcome to my talk From Self-Doubt to Impact, the 5-Step Leadership Framework for Product Managers. I'd like to thank you all so much for signing up for this webinar. And then I'd also like to thank the Product School for having me here today. My name is Chealsea Wierbonski, and I am a keynote speaker, a writer, and a career transformation coach, but I am also a group product manager at Google. And outside of my 9 to 5 at Google, I help ambitious professionals overcome self-doubt to make bold career moves, whether that means stepping into leadership, changing directions, or just starting something new. I've been working in the tech industry for 3 decades. Yes, it's true. I know I don't look like it, but I've been working in tech since 1996. And for nearly half of that time, I've spent at Google leading product teams. So I totally understand the challenges of navigating demanding industries in order to build a fulfilling career. Over the years, I've had to overcome many challenges in order to be successful in my career and in my life. And some of those same challenges apply to becoming an effective product leader. But the strategies that I use to find the success that I now have are likely not what you're thinking, because it's so common to believe that we need a list of credentials, skills, or experience, or maybe to make the right connections in order to get ahead, rise to leadership, get that promotion, or whatever bold career move we're pursuing. But having success comes down to something much more simple than you realize. And that is the importance of doing inner work that builds you up as a confident leader from the inside out. And I'm going to be sharing with you today just what I mean by this and how I use these same strategies to transform not only my career, but also my life. Before we jump in, I did want to mention that today's webinar is part 1 of a 2-part series. So for our next event, which will be on March 24th, I'm going to be hosting a live interactive workshop and Q&A where we're going to dive deeper into the topics that I'm sharing with you today. And we can also, I'm happy to answer general product management questions during that Q&A as well. So sign up for that event if you like. I'd love to see you there. And the event, the URL is right down there below. It's bit.ly move-to-impact. So like I said, if you have any questions about the concepts in today's talk, be sure to add them to the chat, and then I will answer them in the upcoming workshop on March 24th. All right, so let's get started. Many product managers, and people for that matter, struggle with self-doubt. We question our decisions, we hesitate to speak up, or maybe we feel like we need to prove ourselves. And to mitigate against this, we attempt to build our confidence by seeking external validation through things like titles, promotions, recognition, approval from others, maybe how much money we're making. But the thing is, no matter how much external validation we get, that self-doubt never seems to go away. Many of us regularly feel like an imposter, and no matter what we do, we can't seem to shake that feeling. And that's because external validation will not give us the confidence we need in order to be strong product leaders. True leadership ability doesn't come from the outside. It comes from within. Now, I'd like for you to really let that idea sink in for a moment. Maybe you may have noticed that you have this never-ending list of skills to acquire or career milestones that you believe you need, but no matter how much progress you make on that list, nothing really changes in terms of your ability to accomplish your career goals. And that's because it literally does not matter what external skills you acquire if you don't first do the inner work that enables you to confidently embody what it feels like to accomplish your career and leadership goals. And again, I'm not talking about something external like the way you carry or present yourself, because thinking about it that way focuses again on external validation. What I'm talking about is believing to your core that you are someone who is worthy of all of those things, worthy of promotions, worthy of compensation increases, a new role, or whatever your career goals are. As long as you view leaders, leadership, or success as something above you, something that you don't have now, but you have to attain, you will be chasing this ideal instead of living it. So how do we move beyond this chasing and proving and the external validation? The key is something that I call leading with inner strength. Inner strength is the bridge that takes you from self-doubt to impact. So what does it mean exactly to lead with inner strength? Leading with inner strength means placing a focus on inner work as opposed to outer tactics and skill building in order to build yourself up as a confident, healthy leader from the inside out. When you develop inner strength, you replace hesitation with clarity and conviction. You lead with authentic confidence and not perfectionism. You make bold decisions without second guessing yourself. And then you influence others through your presence, not just expertise. This talk is going to introduce 5 key steps to help you build inner strength so that you can transform your self-doubt into leadership impact. And that will help you to lead with confidence in your product management career. But before we go too deep on that, I'd like to give you a little background on myself. So as I mentioned, I've worked at Google for 14 years, and I started my journey as a woman in tech nearly 30 years ago. Now, although I might look and sound successful and confident to you now, I didn't always feel that way. I was a first-generation college graduate, and I also come from a coal mining family. My dad, grandfather, and great-grandfather, who was a Polish immigrant, were all coal miners. So my family is incredibly working class. And because I grew up in such a different environment than the typical tech worker, I had a lot of internal struggles early on in my career. I felt different from everyone around me because my background was so different. And I felt incredibly insecure. And this made it difficult for me to connect with my coworkers. And I wasn't really able to create a network or get the kind of support I needed at the time. So after a few painful setbacks, I finally realized that I needed to make some major internal changes in order to have the kind of career and ultimately the kind of life that I wanted. I'm going to go into more detail about all of this in a few minutes, but I wanted to let you know that the concepts that I'm going to talk about today helped me to not only make those changes, but also to transform the way that I thought about myself, my career, and my life. So, as I mentioned, we live in a world that focuses on external factors as a way to measure our success, especially in the workplace and especially in tech. But leading with inner strength focuses on something a bit different. And that is the power of doing inner work that will build you up as a strong, confident leader from the inside out. Now, you might be thinking, that sounds really nice, but is it really going to help me lead my team or be a great product manager and ultimately grow my career in the way that I want? And the short answer is yes, it will. So let's consider traditional leadership programs for a minute. Programs like these typically emphasize outward behaviors, skill building, and tactical, topical solutions, all aimed at helping you take a seat at the table or to develop your executive presence. And this is usually in the form of tips and tricks focused on things like improved communication, collaboration, accountability, influence, negotiation, all of those kinds of things. And while these are extremely valuable skills to learn, they often fall short in one crucial area, and that is sustainability. You see, implementing those external changes can be challenging, and maintaining them is even more challenging. Why? Because they don't address the root causes of the leadership challenges that many of us face, especially when we come from underrepresented communities or non-traditional backgrounds. So I'll give you an example. Imagine you're in a meeting with a bunch of different senior leaders and you're feeling the pressure to speak up. Traditional leadership advice might tell you to fake it until you make it. But for many of us, if we're being brutally honest with ourselves, we don't speak up because we feel intimidated or we feel anxious or we're worried that we'll say something wrong or that it'll sound incompetent. Some of us might even think that what we have to say is just not that important. There are a number of different narratives that can run through our heads in times like these. And all of that mental rumination just stops us in our tracks. So instead of speaking up, we say nothing, and then we beat ourselves up afterwards for missing out on another opportunity to show our stuff. But what if instead of trying to implement the fake it till you make it strategy or whatever other behavior modification you've been given, you had genuine, unshakable confidence that came from within? What if you were able to share your thoughts and ideas without worrying about criticism or failure? And that is the power of leading with inner strength. And that's why doing inner work is so important. Because without inner work, we can continue implementing best practices and attempting to make behavior modifications all day long, but they will not change the way we feel inside. And this is where leading with inner strength comes in. So it's not about ignoring those external skills, but instead it's about combining inner work with outer practices so that you can build a solid foundation from which all of those tactical skills can flourish. All right, so how do we develop this inner strength? Over the course of my career, which as we've heard has been quite a while, I've thought a lot about this because, as I mentioned, I had to do a lot of inner work throughout my career in order just to be able to show up in the way that I wanted and ultimately have the kind of career progression that I wanted. And at each of these critical junctions in my career, I learned something new about myself. And so I made changes to the way that I felt and thought about myself. And all of those things had a positive impact on my career in ways that at the time I couldn't have imagined. It was through those pivotal changes that ultimately led me to feeling successful and being successful by all external accounts. And about a year ago, I took everything I learned over that 30-year career period, and I distilled it into this simple 5-step framework that I'm going to share with you today. Now, my goal for you today is to leave here not just with new ideas, but a renewed sense of possibility. Leading with inner strength isn't just about becoming a better leader, though it absolutely does that. It's about becoming a more authentic, fulfilled version of yourself in the process. All right, so let's dive into the first step. The first step in leading with inner strength is to become aware of your limiting beliefs and negative narratives. Limiting beliefs are those little persistent voices in our head that convince us that we can't be, do, or have something due to a perceived inadequacy. And they're called limiting beliefs because we believe that they're true. And we believe this to a fault. So much so that these beliefs have become our assumption about the way that things just are in our lives. And usually when people hear me say beliefs, they think of something that's like top of mind or a conscious thought. But what I'm talking about here are the beliefs that are in your subconscious mind, beliefs that you're not fully aware of. And these beliefs are often so deeply embedded in us that we don't even realize they're there. Yet they drive most of our behavior. They are a deeply ingrained part of our personalities and the way that we view ourselves and the world. The limiting beliefs we have as adults have been with us for a very long time, and they're usually formed in childhood or young adulthood, and they can come from implied messages or direct messages from family, the society we live in, cultural expectations, that sort of thing. We also form our own limiting beliefs based on unpleasant or painful experiences that we might have had when we were young. Limiting beliefs are usually articulated through negative narratives. And negative narratives are the things that you say about yourself to yourself, like in your mind, or to other people. And as the name implies, they're negative. Negative narratives usually begin with the words, I'm not, I can't, or I could never, and they reinforce the limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves. So, for example, a negative narrative could be, I could never be an executive leader. And when you start digging into this, you might discover that you actually have a limiting belief related to your self-worth that gets expressed through statements like, people like me just don't make it to the top. And once you start paying attention to what you're saying in your own mind or even out loud to other people, you'll start to see just how much you shape your life based on these beliefs, most of which aren't true or don't have to be true. So I'll give you a personal example. I grew up in a small working class town in West Virginia. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that state, it's in a region of the US known as Appalachia, which is actually one of the most economically depressed areas of the United States. And many of the residents there live in poverty. Because I grew up in an environment like that, I developed a limiting belief that nice things weren't available to me. Having a good job or a nice home or a large savings account seemed like something that was reserved for other people, but not for people like me. And that belief impacted not only my material aspirations, but also my career. Because after doing some deep inner work, I realized that growing up in that environment gave me a deep limiting belief that I was somehow less than other people. And then that translated to a belief that I wasn't worthy of those nice things, including the career that I was working so hard to build. So limiting beliefs can sabotage us in many ways, and they usually have repercussions throughout our lives. In my case, because I perceived myself as being so different from my coworkers due to my background, I felt alienated, and I found it difficult to build authentic connections with them. I constantly felt the need to prove myself. I was always on the defensive. I was looking for ways that people might be talking down to me. But this perspective, which was based on my limiting belief of unworthiness, sabotaged my ability to create a network and then created this self-perpetuating cycle. Because I felt alienated, I didn't connect with people. And since I didn't connect with people, I didn't have as much support as I could have, which of course made me feel more alienated. We all grow up with different experiences and different levels of privilege. I used my working class background as an example, but you can form limiting beliefs for all sorts of reasons, regardless of what kind of backgrounds you come from. Who we think we are as a person, including what we think we're capable of and what we believe we deserve, all play a role in our ability to perform at work, whether we realize it or not. Many times, limiting beliefs contribute to a feeling of unworthiness. So at a deep level, we believe that we aren't deserving of any success or reward that comes our way, even if consciously we really want those things. If we feel bad about ourselves and doubt our abilities, that feeling persists in work. And when we're trying to grow and step up as leaders, we are faced with all sorts of situations that challenge our sense of self-worth and that make us question our abilities. All right, so identifying your limiting beliefs comes down to two things. Number one, pay attention to how you feel. And number two, listen to what you say about yourself, both in your mind and out loud to other people. All right, so let's talk about step number one, paying attention to how you feel. For this step, you're going to want to notice situations at work where you feel anxious, frustrated, or discouraged. Anytime you feel triggered, that's your cue to tune in. And it's easy to ignore those feelings and emotions at work because we're taught to be professional and we're taught that, you can't have any emotions at work. And so when we start feeling triggered at work, we just kind of sweep it under the rug to get the feeling out of us as quickly as possible. And so we kind of compartmentalize. But your mind doesn't know the difference between your work life and your personal life. So the fact that you're getting triggered at work doesn't make those emotions or feelings any less valid or important. If something is triggering anxiety or anger, your brain is perceiving it as a threat. So it's important to ask yourself why. And more importantly, it's important to listen to the answer. What's that narrative running through your mind in the moment that's causing you to react or feel the way you are? All right, so step 2, listen to what you say about yourself. How do you describe yourself and your abilities? Your limiting beliefs often show up in the way you talk about yourself. So if you catch yourself saying things like, I'm just not good at that, or I could never make that much money, or I'm not ready for that title or promotion, those statements feel true, but they're just beliefs. They are not facts. And most of the time, they're actually not true at all. Now, I'd love to hear from you all in the comments. What is a limiting belief that you've caught yourself saying? So be sure to add the comment so that we can talk about it when we meet next week. All right, so once you've learned how to identify those limiting beliefs and their accompanying negative narratives, it's time to get to work on shifting them. When you see your career through the lens of limiting beliefs, you automatically shrink your possibility. You're not reaching your full potential because by definition, you are limiting yourself. But the good news here is that we are not fixed as human beings. Every limiting belief can be changed. And the way to change them is by shifting the negative narratives in your mind. Because when you reframe your inner dialogue, your beliefs about yourself will follow. But why is shifting limiting beliefs so important for becoming a leader and growing your career? First, leadership isn't just about work. It's about how you show up in your life. When you build confidence as a leader at work, you also strengthen how you show up in other places, like for your children, your community, and around the world. These skills go beyond your job title, but it's almost impossible to feel empowered at work or in life when you're constantly battling self-doubt and negative self-talk. From a practical standpoint, limiting beliefs hold us back in our careers. They keep us from going after senior or executive roles. They make us hesitate instead of pursuing life-changing opportunities. And they ultimately shape our decisions and behaviors without us even realizing it. And it happens in small moments too. So remember the example I gave earlier? I said because I didn't feel like I deserved my career, I showed up awkwardly in conversations, and I was sometimes defensive without meaning to be. And that really held me back. It hurt my credibility as a leader. And here's the tricky part. Just because you want something doesn't mean that you don't have limiting beliefs about it. So for example, you might say that you want a promotion, but if deep down you don't feel worthy of success, you will subconsciously sabotage your own chances. And that's how limiting beliefs become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Most of us know what we want. We have a vision for our careers, a goal that we dream about, but we struggle to make it happen because our limiting beliefs keep blocking our progress. So how do we break free from this cycle? How do we shift from limiting beliefs to an empowered mindset? Shifting limiting beliefs is about changing the image that you have of yourself and how you view the world. It's a process of showing yourself over time that your limiting beliefs simply aren't true, or they don't have to be true. The process for shifting limiting beliefs is pretty straightforward. The challenge, though, is actually being diligent about implementing it. So to shift your limiting beliefs, you'll want to look for evidence that contradicts any of the limiting beliefs you've identified. And then anytime you hear yourself repeating a negative narrative that supports one of those limiting beliefs, you reframe that statement with the evidence that you found. Evidence can come from any area of your life, not just work, because limiting beliefs usually aren't fixed to just one area of your life. They tend to permeate throughout. So let's use an example. Maybe you have a limiting belief that says, I could never be a leader at work. And you're having a difficult time finding evidence to the contrary at work. And in these cases, it's important to take a look at other areas of your life where you've demonstrated leadership qualities. So have you organized events? Have you led a community project? Those types of activities are indicators that you have leadership skills. So you can rely on examples from this part of your life to refute your limiting beliefs about your perceived inability to be a leader at work. For me, when I started being more objective about my contributions at work, I was able to refute my limiting belief that I was unworthy of my career. I took an objective look at all of the progress I'd made. And instead of viewing my career through the lens of limitation and criticism, which caused me to focus on what I hadn't done, I instead started focusing on what I had done, and I used that as evidence to refute my belief of unworthiness. Now, when you start this process, it might feel uncomfortable or even fraudulent at first. You might have a difficult time believing your evidence, and that's okay. It's totally normal. Those beliefs didn't form overnight, and so it just takes some time to unwind them. And the key is just to keep at it. Each time you catch yourself repeating a negative narrative, instantly reframe it using the evidence that you found. Now, remember, if you have any questions about any of this, or if you just want to share some thoughts as we're going along, please don't forget to add it to the comments so that we can talk about these in next week's workshop. All right, so once you've gotten the hang of refuting your limiting beliefs, it's time to work on building authentic confidence. And it's in this step that we start to see real transformation in terms of how we show up as leaders and in our careers. Authentic confidence isn't about faking it until you make it. It's about trusting yourself deeply, no matter the situation. It's about having an unwavering belief in ourselves and the intrinsic value that we bring to any situation. So, by that I mean, it's the value that we bring just by virtue of being our unique selves, with our own unique combination of traits and abilities. Authentic confidence does not come from external comparisons or affirmations from other people or even society. It's something that we develop from within. It's the kind of confidence that allows us to take bold action before we feel fully ready. It allows us to push boundaries and to lead fearlessly without overthinking every move. And it also allows us to navigate uncertainty with self-trust instead of seeking external reassurance. But the challenge with this is that so many of us struggle with self-doubt because of a harsh inner critic. So the inner critic isn't just a random negative voice. It's actually a protection mechanism, and it evolved to keep us safe, to help us avoid failure, rejection, or embarrassment by making us hyper aware of potential risks or threats. Now, in childhood, that voice might have been useful because maybe it kept us out of trouble or it helped us meet the expectations of our parents and teachers. But as adults, when we start to take on bigger challenges, that voice works against us. And instead of keeping us safe, it keeps us small. When your inner critic gets triggered, it's usually something like, "You're not ready. Who do you think you are? You'll fail and everyone will see. You're not as smart or as talented as other people." And that voice can be subtle and quiet, or it can be really loud and overpowering. But it is not objective. It's fear-based thinking, and it just repeats old patterns and outdated beliefs that we've picked up from our past. For example, if you grew up in a highly critical environment where love or approval felt conditional, your inner critic likely mirrors that same voice, and it will set impossible standards for you and make you question your worth. But here's the most important thing to remember. Your inner critic does not predict the future. It's only repeating the past. So when it tells you that you can't do something, it's not giving you facts. It's giving you old fears. But the good news here is that just like any habit, you can rewire it. And when you do, you develop confidence that's genuinely unshakable because it's built from within. For many of us, what makes work stressful or difficult is not the actual work we're doing or the intellectual challenges. The real challenge comes from managing emotions in the workplace. Every coworker, manager, and stakeholder that you interact with brings their own self-doubts, their limiting beliefs, and their emotional triggers into the workplace. And this is what creates stress. It's not the work itself, but the emotional dynamics. If everyone operated just with neutral emotions, work would be easy. But that's not the reality. And since we can't control how other people feel or behave, the best way to succeed at work as a leader is to focus on changing how we feel about ourselves. Because when you feel secure and self assured, you respond rather than react. And in challenging situations, you don't take things personally. You recognize that other people's actions aren't always about you. And you are able to lead with clarity instead of being clouded by self doubt and fear. And this is why building authentic confidence is so important. It shifts the way that you interact with everyone and every challenge that you face. Authentic confidence requires something that many people struggle with, and that is self-acceptance. True confidence does not come from being perfect, contrary to what we might think. It comes from accepting yourself, flaws and all. When you show up at work fully grounded in who you are, it's incredibly powerful. You no longer feel the need to over-explain yourself, over-apologize, or seek permission to lead. Instead, you become unshakable. You trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, others do too. It is a common misconception that confidence comes from external validation, that it's something that arrives after certain achievements are obtained, like degrees, job titles, salaries, or any other success marker. We oftentimes wait for a feeling of readiness before we make big career decisions. We tell ourselves that, oh, now is not the right time. We need more X first. This hesitation and waiting stems from the desire to have a certain level of confidence before we make a move. But the truth is, confidence isn't something you have before you take action. Confidence is something that you build through action. We build authentic confidence every time we push ourselves beyond our comfort zone, proving to ourselves that we are more capable than we think. Confidence doesn't come from thinking our way into feeling ready. It comes from taking action before we feel ready. Every time you stretch yourself, whether physically, mentally, or emotionally, you grow. Every time you push past fear, you strengthen self-trust. And every time you show up despite self-doubt, you build real, lasting confidence. And this isn't about proving anything to other people. It's about demonstrating to ourselves what actual badasses we are. For me, this journey started with fitness. I went from being an inactive workaholic who couldn't even run the length of a city block to running half marathons and working out 7 days a week. And I did that in my 40s, okay? But this wasn't just a physical transformation. It was a mental one. I proved to myself that I was stronger than my doubts, and that confidence spilled over to every part of my life. But your challenges don't have to be physical. Maybe it's pursuing a higher level role or learning a new skill or even moving to a new city. The key is to choose something that stretches you but doesn't overwhelm you. And remember, your mind is wired for safety, not for growth. So anytime you step into something new, your brain perceives it as risky, even if it's a positive move. That's why the inner critic kicks in, reminding you of all of the reasons you shouldn't even try. You start saying things like, what if I fail? What if I'm not ready? What if people don't think I belong here? But this fear doesn't mean stop and wait. It means take the step and grow. Because remember, your inner critic is not a predictor of the future. It's just an echo of your past fears, and you don't have to listen to it. The key is to override the fear response by taking action anyway. Acknowledge the fear, but don't let it stop you. Remind yourself that discomfort means I'm growing. Then take that first step, even if it feels small, because any step towards growth is a positive step. One of my favorite quotes is from Confucius, and it goes, "It doesn't matter how slowly you go as long as you do not stop." And I think about that quote all of the time when I'm working through my own fears that come up in times of growth. And it's a really good mantra for helping you to keep going. So I encourage you to take a moment and identify one area where you can challenge yourself. What's something that excites you but also feels a bit intimidating? That's your growth opportunity. Lean into it, push through the discomfort, and you'll see your authentic confidence soar. All right, so step 4 in leading with inner strength is to work from a place of alignment. Working from alignment means working in a way that feels good to you, usually because it means doing something we love and making the type of impact that's important to us. But it can also mean just making minor modifications to a career situation in order to make it a little more aligned with our values, such as mentoring other more junior colleagues if you really like to be of service. Now, you might be wondering, why is working in alignment important to leadership and career success? Well, we spend so much of our lifetime working, 90,000 hours to be exact. That is 1/3 of your life. Sorry if that's depressing to anyone. Working in a way that resonates with you means that you will feel good when you are at work. And when you feel good at work and you're happy, you perform better, you make better decisions, and you have a positive impact on everyone around you, all of which supports your leadership journey. Working in a way that's out of alignment or that doesn't resonate with who we are internally can cause difficulty at work. Working without feeling fulfilled day in and day out over many years really takes a toll on our mental health and our well-being, which eventually works against us in the office, either in the form of burnout or through feelings of resentment. And ultimately, those feelings will impact your performance or your relationship with your coworkers. When we are working in a way that is out of alignment with our true selves, internal conflict is created. And that can surface at work in the form of outward conflict, or in extreme cases, it can manifest as toxic behavior. Those dynamics make work uncomfortable for everyone involved. And as I said earlier, that's the major contributor to stress. When those types of feelings and behaviors come up, it's a sure sign that something isn't right internally, meaning we are out of alignment with what we truly want. So how do we know if we're working in alignment? The best way is to do a vision exercise for your career and then for your life. Creating a vision for your life is so important because it helps you to identify what motivates you, and it therefore helps you to determine the kind of life you want to live, both in and out of work. It helps you to identify the things you need in order to live your life in a way that you can feel proud of. In my case, because of the economic instability that I grew up with, one of my main motivators for wanting anything at work was to have financial security. I pursued my promotions and even my jobs based on how well I thought I could be compensated. The interesting thing about this is that no matter what I did or what kind of great job I got or how much money I made, I still didn't feel fulfilled in the way that I wanted, and I didn't understand why. Now, of course, I know why. It's because I hadn't done the work to understand what was important to me. I didn't have any sort of vision for my life. One of the most important things that I discovered about myself when I started digging in was that I derived a great sense of fulfillment through connection with others and being of service to them. And that's what led me to start taking on more mentees and eventually begin my public speaking and coaching practice. A great way to understand whether you're working in alignment is to create that clear, detailed vision through your life through journaling. Now, in addition to thinking about the specific external details of the vision, it's also so important to think about how you would want to feel in that ideal life. In other words, instead of just journaling about the material things or external changes you want to see, such as a promotion and more money, try to think about, how do you want to feel in that ideal version of your life? For example, do you want to feel more free, abundant, intellectually stimulated, fun? So think about those feelings, not just the material changes that you want to see. And I usually do that journaling exercise for 15 or 20 minutes. And, it doesn't have to be a big formal thing. You can just sit down and do it when you have a chance. And when you do that, just ask yourself, if I could have my career and life any way that I wanted, where there's no limitation, the sky is the limit, what would it look like and how would I feel? And when doing that, it's helpful just to let your mind soar and write whatever comes to mind. Don't try to examine whether or not something's possible or likely or what the logistics are. which is a big thing that we people in tech seem to get hung up on. Forget about the logistics. Don't worry about the how to make it happen. That's not the point of the exercise. This is meant to be fun and dreamy, and it's crucial because it helps you get in touch with what you want your career and life to look like. So it's really important that you don't set boundaries on it. All right, so the final step for leading with inner strength is using your newfound inner strength to lead with empathy, compassion, vulnerability, and authenticity. Empathy is the foundation of strong leadership. It allows us to step into another person's perspective and understand their emotions. When we're triggered by someone's actions, our first instinct is to often focus on how their behavior impacts us, how we feel, why we believe they're wrong, and what we wish they would change. But if we want to lead with inner strength, we need to step back and ask, what might this person be experiencing that is causing them to react this way? When we start to see others as people who are struggling, it creates a sense of connection as opposed to opposition. And most of the time people mean well, but when they act in unhelpful or frustrating ways, it's often because they're grappling with their own emotional responses and they're just struggling to manage them. By leading with empathy first, we build a deeper understanding of the people around us. And that understanding is what allows us to extend compassion in a way that actually helps. Once we've developed empathy, the ability to understand and connect with others' emotions, we can take it a step further by leading with compassion. Now, empathy is about feeling with someone. Compassion is feeling for someone and taking action to help. Throughout your career, you're going to face difficult people, tense situations, and moments of conflict. Whether it's a disagreement in a meeting, a misalignment with a stakeholder, or a challenging personality on your team, those situations can feel frustrating and they can feel triggering or even discouraging. For a long time, when I faced tense interactions at work, I would ruminate about them for days. I would lose sleep. I would replay the conversations in my mind, and I criticized myself for how I handle it. I thought, oh, leaders aren't supposed to feel this way. But the truth is, we are human. No matter how strong or experienced we are, we will have emotional reactions. And the key is not to suppress them, but to respond with compassion. Self-compassion means recognizing that it's okay to have feelings, to get triggered, or to struggle with difficult situations. It doesn't mean that you're bad at your job, and it doesn't make you any less of a leader. It makes you a real one. When you let go of self-criticism, you free yourself to learn, grow, and lead with confidence. And just as we extend compassion to ourselves, we must also extend it to others. When someone around you seems frustrated, defensive, or tense, they're usually struggling with their own challenges, even if it's not obvious. So instead of reacting with equal tension, which has the potential to escalate an already frustrating situation, pause and ask yourself, what does this person need right now? And most of the time, quite honestly, people just need to feel heard. So if you can listen to them first, you'll often find that the tension eases and their defensiveness will subside. And that will allow for a productive conversation afterwards. By leading with both empathy and compassion, you move from reacting to people to leading them. You foster stronger relationships, you reduce conflict, and you become the kind of leader that other people trust and respect. One of the most impactful ways to lead is by embracing vulnerability. Some of the best leaders I've ever worked with weren't the ones who had all the answers or never showed emotion. They were the ones who weren't afraid to be real. Being vulnerable makes you more relatable. It helps people feel comfortable around you, and it builds trust because when you're open about challenges, it shows your team that it's okay to struggle and that challenges can be overcome. And this is especially important if you're in more of a senior role. Sometimes when leaders don't show any vulnerability, they can feel distant or unapproachable, even if they don't mean to. But when you open up, it removes that barrier. People feel less intimidated, more comfortable, and then they're more willing to come to you with ideas, concerns, or feedback. And that has real benefits. It helps your team trust you more. It creates a safe environment where people feel supported. And then it makes your team more engaged and therefore more productive because they don't feel like they have to put on a front. At the end of the day, we all struggle as human beings. When you're open about your own challenges, it sets the tone for your team. And that's what creates a great culture where people feel safe, supported, and then motivated to do their best work. Vulnerability naturally leads to authenticity, which is another key point of leading with inner strength. I've already talked about the importance of developing authentic confidence within yourself, but being authentic with others is just as important. When you show up as your full authentic self, it signals to other people that you are comfortable with who you are, and that naturally makes them feel more comfortable around you. And just like vulnerability, authenticity builds trust. Authenticity in communication, also a powerful tool. You've probably noticed in your own experience at work that some leaders feel really genuine when they speak, while others just don't. And you can tell when someone's being real versus when they're saying what they think that they're supposed to say. When you communicate with authenticity, your team knows that they can trust you. They feel safe. They know that you're being honest. And then they naturally start looking to you for guidance, which makes you a leader, whether you have that title or not. Now, here's why all four of these qualities matter so much. First, they just make you feel better internally. There's no internal tension, no pretending, no conflict between who you are and how you show up. You can just be yourself. But the outward impact is huge. When you show up with empathy, compassion, vulnerability, and authenticity, you make other people feel at ease. You create trust, and trust builds great team culture. And when teams and companies have a great culture, people are happier, they work better together, and then they perform at a much higher level. When you're leading a high-performing, engaged, and happy team, guess what? It's going to be obvious to everyone around you and in your organization what an incredible leader you are. All right. So I know that was a lot of information. Again, please don't forget if you have any questions or just comments, like things that came up for you during this talk, I would love to hear about it in the comments. But before we wrap up, let's just summarize the key steps. 1, become aware of your limiting beliefs and negative narratives. Start by noticing how you feel in different situations at work. Pay attention to the stories you tell yourself about yourself, both in your mind and out loud. Number 2, shift your limiting beliefs and negative narratives. When you hear yourself engaging in self-doubt or negative self-talk, challenge it. Find evidence that contradicts those beliefs and then reframe them. Remind yourself that your inner critic does not predict the future. It only repeats the past. Number 3, build confidence from the inside out, not through external validation. True confidence isn't about titles, achievements, or approval from others. It's built by taking on challenges that feel uncomfortably exciting. So stretching yourself beyond your comfort zone. The more you push past fear, the more your authentic confidence will grow. Number 4, work from a place of alignment. Alignment happens when your career and actions match your true values and goals. A lack of alignment creates inner conflict, which leads to stress and unproductive behavior. Get clear on your vision, not just for your career, but for your life. Think about how you want to feel, not just the material things you want to accomplish or acquire. And then finally, lead with empathy, compassion, vulnerability, and authenticity. When you lead from a place of inner strength, you create a culture where people thrive. People perform better, they feel safe, they feel supported and connected. And when you embody these leadership qualities, other people naturally see you as a leader, even if you don't have that title yet. And before we end, I just want to emphasize one key thing. And that is just that this is a process. inner work isn't something that you do once and then check off a list. It's something that you practice over time. And if some of these concepts feel challenging at first, that is totally normal. The key is to keep going, because the longer you do this work, the stronger you feel. And then the stronger that you feel, the more empowered you'll be as a leader. And that's what it means to lead with inner strength. All right, so if you'd like to go deeper on any of these topics as well as similar topics, be sure to sign up for my newsletter by scanning that QR code right there. And you can also follow me on social media. I have all my handles listed there on that side on the left. And Instagram is where I post the most. So, you can also follow me on LinkedIn, but if you want to get the full content, follow me on Instagram. I also do TikTok, but like I said, Instagram is my priority. I share a lot of free learning content that covers the topics today, as well as a lot of other career transformation related topics. And then please don't forget, I will be coming back to the product school next week for a live Q&A session where I can answer any of your questions about this content or any general product management related questions you might have for me. So be sure not to miss that session. It's going to be really great. And the sign up link one final time down there. It's bit.ly/move-to-impact. Thank you so much for your time today, and I really hope to see you next week.